Well, for more, we can speak to Lawrence Douglas, a law professor at Amherst College and the creator of the podcast, The Case Against Donald Trump. Professor, thank you for speaking to France 24. Just want to go through what we learned. Protesters stormed the Capitol. They desecrated the seat of government. They chanted, "Hang Mike Pence," all the while the president, the most powerful man in the world, calmly watching it on television. As a nation, when the U.S. is reliving this moment on primetime television, what was one of the most shocking episodes in U.S. history? What stood out for you?
Well, it's actually something that you've already kind of touched on in the broadcast. I mean, one of the things that I found a very kind of moving and gripping detail was hearing that the security detail for Vice President Pence, that they actually feared for their lives. As you pointed out, that they kind of put in phone calls asking people in the White House to contact their loved ones and basically say goodbye to them if they were unable to reach out to them. I mean, and all the while, we know that Trump then sends out a tweet that basically attacks Mike Pence. And it's just kind of incredible that, we have a sitting president of the United States basically doing nothing to protect his own vice president, and in fact seeming to approve of the attack on him.
Yeah, and doing nothing. The panel careful to point out that it wasn't that he failed to act, it's that he chose to act. This term, dereliction of duty, it's being thrown a lot by this panel, by the media, by politicians. Is this an accurate term to use in this case, and is this something he could be prosecuted for?
So dereliction of duty is not a criminal offense. I mean, I think what they were trying to point out is that he was violating his oath of office as president of the United States. So certainly, if Trump were president, this would be dereliction of duty would be ample reason to impeach him and remove him from office. So I think this was more of a political case that the committee was making to the American people, particularly in as much as Trump is threatening to run again in 2024. So I think this was really showing his absolute unfitness as the commander-in-chief of the United States. But dereliction of duty is not a criminal offense, though it is possible that Trump would still face criminal exposure for the events of January 6th.
Professor, I'm going to give you a moment to plug your podcast if you want. The panel seeking to show Trump acted illegally in a bid to overturn his election loss to Joe Biden. Has it made any mistakes? How would you have built this case? Would you have done anything differently?
I mean, I think the committee has done a remarkably good job. And I think it's done a remarkably good job in the following sense. If anyone's actually watching this thing, that is, if there are fervent Trump loyalists who are paying attention to this, they can't dismiss the evidence that's being marshaled as simply material from Democrats or for Trump haters or for so-called RINOs, these Republicans in name only. The evidence that the committee has supplied comes directly from Trump's own White House. It comes from his own supporters. These are not people who are anti-Trumpers. And I think that's been one of the most powerful aspects of these hearings, the way in which they built a case against Trump, relying almost exclusively on testimony of Republicans and Republicans in the White House itself.
And yet, do you think it will lead to anything? Trump always said he was a victim of a witch hunt. The people who see this committee that are Trump supporters, they don't take it legitimately or seriously. And now the people who are testifying against Trump that you say were supporters, the Trump supporters might just think that they're traitors. Do you think it's going to have any sort of concrete effect on the American society moving forward?
Well, again, I would hope it affects some people who are still amenable to reality. I mean, I don't want to say that in a kind of really pejorative way, but if people are simply getting their information from unreliable sources that continue to espouse lies and conspiracy theories, then probably these hearings aren't going to do a whole lot to convince them otherwise. On the other hand, if people are open to receiving reliable information, I do think that the hearings have pushed the needle. We've seen polls indicating that over 60 or roughly 60% of Americans actually support criminal charges being brought against Donald Trump. That's a significant majority, 60%.
Yeah, now this after the 8th hearing, we're going to take a pause and reconvene in the fall. On that note about criminal charges, could they be brought against Trump?
Yeah, I mean, the committee itself could not bring the criminal charges. The committee could recommend that Trump be indicted, but of course, it would be the Department of Justice that would actually indict him, that would bring the criminal charges. And the two possible crimes that I think they're looking at is either conspiracy to defraud the United States or the corrupt obstruction of an official proceeding. And, certainly from what we've seen in the hearings, there seems to be ample evidence for going forward with those kinds of indictments. Now, obviously, putting a former president on trial and one who continues to enjoy a lot of support among a certain percentage of Americans, there are high political risks associated with it. That said, there are also very high political risks in not putting on trial someone who engaged in the kinds of activities that Trump engaged in.
Thank you for staying on the line with us and sharing your time and your analysis, Professor Lawrence Douglas from Amherst College.
My pleasure.